You know that feeling when everything looks perfect on the outside, but something just doesn't sit right? That was my life. Our home always echoed with laughter, little feet running across the hardwood floors, toy trucks under the couch, a mess I didn't even mind. I had my routine down to an art, juggling part-time work, dinner preps, after-school chaos. Mark would come home, kiss me on the cheek, ask about the kids, and Chloe, our nanny, she was a godsend. Young, cheerful, reliable. Or so I thought. At first, it was just small things. Chloe started dressing a little differently, tighter jeans, lower necklines, that kind of thing. I told myself I was being paranoid. She's young, stylish. Who was I to judge? But then I noticed how Mark looked at her. Not just a glance, something else. A flicker I hadn't seen in years. And the way he'd throw her compliments like confetti? My stomach started to turn, even if my lips kept smiling. I tried to shake it off. I mean, we all get insecure sometimes, right? Maybe I was just tired, overthinking. I even talked myself into believing it was all in my head. But then came the little whispers between them when I walked into a room. The quick way Chloe would change the subject. And Mark, he changed the passwords on everything. I didn't want to believe what my gut was screaming, but God, it was getting harder to ignore. I started watching more closely, quietly, like a woman who already knows too much but isn't ready to admit it. I'd catch them in the middle of some hushed joke, their laughter dying the second I entered the room. Mark began working late more often, but his shirts came back smelling like fresh cologne, not stress. Chloe started arriving earlier than necessary and staying just a little too long after her hours were up. She acted sweet as ever, but her eyes avoided mine. And in those silences between us, something had shifted. I could feel it in my bones. Still, I kept showing up, folding laundry, making lunches, kissing scraped knees, because that's what moms do. We keep the world spinning even when ours is tilting. I told myself not to overreact. I even convinced myself to be nicer to Chloe, to Mark, like I could somehow fix things before they broke. But something about the way he looked at her, how she responded with that slight tilt of her head and a too smooth laugh, it wasn't innocent. Not anymore. Then one night, after putting the kids to bed, I walked into the kitchen and found them standing a little too close. Chloe had her hand on his arm, and when they saw me, they jumped apart like kids caught sneaking cookies. My heart didn't race. It dropped, right into my stomach. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and whispered to myself, "Something's going on." It wasn't a question anymore. It was the start of an answer I wasn't sure I wanted. I started noticing the little things I used to overlook. How Mark suddenly locked his phone. How Chloe never left her bag unattended anymore. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't being dramatic. This was real. And the more I tried to ignore it, the louder that gut feeling became. Like an alarm only I could hear, ringing under my skin every time they brushed past each other. Every time she smiled too long. Every time he looked guilty and then masked it too quickly. I stopped sleeping well. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and just sit there, staring at him while he snored, wondering who he really was now. The man who held my hand through childbirth, the one who used to make Sunday pancakes with the kids and dance in the kitchen like a fool. Was that still in him somewhere? Or had it all been replaced by secrets and lies dressed up as everyday life? My chest ached with the weight of not knowing, and the fear that I already did. I didn't say a word. Not to him. Not to Chloe. Not even to my closest friend. Instead, I kept moving through the days like nothing was wrong. Like our life wasn't hanging by threads only I could see unraveling. But inside, something in me was shifting. Quiet, steady, dangerous. Because once a woman listens to that whisper in her gut, the story begins to change. It happened on a Tuesday. Funny how ordinary days carry the weight of the biggest betrayals. Mark had fallen asleep on the couch, phone in hand, half a beer still sweating on the coffee table. I stood there, frozen for a second, heart pounding, mouth dry, before I even realized I was reaching for it. I didn't plan it. I didn't want to find anything. but the screen lit up with a soft buzz, and that was it. No lock, no barrier, just the raw truth waiting to be seen. I opened the messages. My fingers trembled. At first, I couldn't even process what I was reading, just fragments. Last night was perfect. I can still feel you. Heart emojis, a picture of her, wearing the dress I bought her for Christmas. That's when my breath caught in my throat. I felt like I'd swallowed fire. My face burned, but my hands were ice. And then came his reply, something about how she made him feel alive again. My whole body stiffened. Alive again? What the hell did that make me? I wanted to scream, throw the phone, shake him awake, demand answers. But I didn't. I couldn't. I stood there, staring at that glowing screen, watching my marriage crumble one message at a time. Chloe, her, in my home, around my babies. I thought I knew betrayal. I didn't. Not like this, not this intimate, this calculated. I saved the screenshots one by one, every photo, every word, like I was collecting pieces of a crime scene. I sat down at the kitchen table with his phone in my hand and a knot in my stomach so tight it felt like I couldn't breathe. The fridge hummed. The clock ticked. Mark snored gently from the couch, completely unaware that the woman he betrayed was sitting 10 feet away, quietly dying inside. I scrolled further, texts sent during dinner, during bath time, even during our anniversary weekend. I wanted to vomit. All this time, I thought I was building a life. Turns out, I was standing on a rug they'd been yanking out from under me. And it wasn't just the affair, it was who it was with. Chloe had held my newborn while I showered. She knew the name of our pediatrician. She'd folded my son's pajamas, kissed my daughter goodnight, borrowed my sweaters. I let her into every corner of my life, trusted her like a sister, like family. And she repaid me by creeping into my husband's arms behind my back. The betrayal wrapped around me like a weighted blanket I couldn't shake off. It wasn't just cheating. It was a complete collapse of safety. But I didn't fall apart. Not right then. Something in me locked into place. Cold, clear, focused. I took screenshots of everything. I uploaded copies to a cloud folder under a fake name. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew I wasn't going to let this go quietly. Not after what they'd done. Not after what they'd taken. And for the first time in weeks, I stopped feeling powerless. That night, I crawled into bed beside him like nothing had changed. He rolled over, mumbled something half asleep, and pulled the blanket over his shoulder. I stared at the ceiling, hands tucked under my pillow, heart pounding so loudly I thought it might shake the room. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I just kept replaying the images, the words, the realization that everything I thought was sacred had been tainted. But I didn't cry. Not yet. I was past tears. I was somewhere else entirely now. In the morning, I got the kids ready like always. Made toast, braided hair, tied shoes. Chloe showed up with her usual chipper smile, holding coffee like a peace offering, and I smiled back. Too wide, too polite, like I'd swallowed the sun just to keep it from burning her. She didn't know I'd seen it all. Neither of them did. And that gave me power. The kind of power that doesn't shout or slam doors. The kind that waits, plans, observes. I had no idea where this was going yet, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to be the broken one in this story. I'd let them play their little game, pretend nothing was wrong, let them get comfortable. Because the moment I decided to say nothing was the same moment I began writing a brand new ending. And soon, they'd both learn just how dangerous a woman can be when she's been quiet too long. People think revenge looks like shouting or slashing tires. But real revenge, the kind that leaves a mark, is calm, precise, thought out. That's the path I chose. I didn't want to punish them in the heat of anger. I wanted them to feel the chill of their own choices sinking in slowly. So while Chloe hummed in the kitchen and Mark kissed me goodbye like nothing had changed, I made my first call to a private investigator. A woman, actually. Discreet. Sharp. She understood the assignment before I even finished explaining. Within days, I had more than screenshots. I had timestamps, hotel bills, surveillance footage. I knew which nights they snuck away. I saw grainy stills of them walking into rooms with dim lighting and cheap wallpaper. Funny how love affairs look so glamorous in movies. In real life, they happen in parking lots and budget suites with peeling numbers on the doors. I cataloged everything, every single piece of evidence, like I was building a case in a courtroom only I could see. And in a way, I was. Then I found a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, a shark in heels, highly recommended by women who'd walked through fire and come out stronger. We met in secret. I told her everything. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "We'll make sure you come out of this on top." And that's when I felt it for the first time in weeks. Relief. The kind that doesn't come from hope, but from having a plan. I wasn't trapped anymore. I was preparing for the exit, and I would be the one holding the door. I kept my routine flawless. School drop-offs, bedtime stories, dinner just the way Mark liked it. He didn't notice the difference. Not really. He thought I was distracted, maybe tired. But I was simply focused. Every moment became part of a bigger design. Even my smiles were measured, just convincing enough to keep suspicion away. Chloe, bless her deluded heart, thought she still had the upper hand. She walked through my house like she belonged there. Like the affair made her invincible. She had no idea the stage was already being built beneath her feet. That's when I planned the dinner. A family evening, I told Mark. Just us, the kids, his parents, a few close friends. And Chloe, of course. I made sure to invite her myself. "You're part of the family," I said with a smile that felt like poison wrapped in silk. He grinned like a man too sure of himself. She flushed, flattered. I watched their faces closely. This was the part where they got comfortable, where they let their guard down. And that was exactly what I needed. In the quiet hours after everyone went to bed, I sat alone at the dining room table, piecing together the slideshow. It wasn't sentimental. It wasn't warm, it was cold, calculated. Every photo, every message, every receipt and video clip stitched into a presentation that would rip the mask off both of them. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just worked. Steady hands, steadier heart. Because if they wanted a show, I was going to give them one they'd never forget. Every detail mattered. The playlist I chose for the dinner, the seating arrangement, Chloe right across from Mark, my children between us, innocent bookends to the betrayal. I even polished the wine glasses myself, watching my reflection distort in the curve of the crystal. The house had never looked so beautiful, or so staged. It was the kind of evening people would remember, only not for the reasons they expected. And that's exactly how I wanted it. The closer the dinner got, the calmer I became. Not the kind of calm that comes from peace, but the kind that comes right before a storm. I felt powerful in a way I hadn't in years. Not because I had all the answers, but because I finally had nothing to hide. They did. I looked at Chloe and Mark and thought, smile while you can, because soon the spotlight would shift, and I wouldn't even need to raise my voice to burn everything down. So when the night came and the table was set, and everyone walked in with laughter and wine in their hands, I was ready. I wore the dress Mark once said made me look too serious. Funny, he never liked me serious. But he was about to meet a version of me he'd never forget. And as Chloe walked in, smiling sweetly, I welcomed her with open arms, knowing full well that soon they'd both wish I'd never opened my eyes. The room buzzed with casual chatter, the clinking of glasses, the scent of roasted garlic and fresh basil wafting through the air. Mark was charming as ever, refilling wine, laughing too loudly at his father's old stories. Chloe? She played the doting helper, slipping in and out of the kitchen, offering second helpings like she hadn't poisoned the very soil beneath this home. I floated through it all with a smile, my hands steady, my heart quiet. Not empty, not angry, just ready. When dessert was cleared and the kids were tucked upstairs, I stood, gently, like any gracious hostess. I held my glass and tapped a spoon to it, not too hard, just enough to hush the room. "Before we wrap up," I said, "I want to thank everyone for coming. Tonight meant a lot." I looked around at the faces of people who thought they knew us, who thought this was just another warm family evening. Then I added, family is built on trust. So tonight let's take a moment to look at what that really means. I clicked the remote. The screen flickered to life. At first, just a photo. Mark and Chloe walking into that hotel, arms close, heads low. A hush fell over the room. I advanced the slide slowly. Screenshots of texts, hotel receipts, that picture of her in my dress. Every image felt like a hammer on glass. Gasps. A cough. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I didn't speak. I let the truth do it for me. And for once, Mark had nothing to say. Chloe's smile dropped first. She stared at the screen like it was speaking a language she couldn't translate. Her face turned the color of old paper, her fingers clutching the edge of her napkin like it could save her. Mark, on the other hand, was still trying to process. His mouth opened once, then closed, then opened again. I watched him like I was outside my own body, like I was studying a man I used to know, watching guilt carve itself into his skin, inch by inch. "What is this?" he finally said. But his voice cracked halfway through, and no one answered. His mother covered her mouth. His father just stared at him, stone still. Chloe pushed back her chair so suddenly it screeched. She didn't say a word. She didn't try to deny it. She just stood up and left, head down, heels clicking sharp against the tile as if she was being chased by the truth itself. The door slammed shut behind her. That sound was better than any apology they could have offered. Mark looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time, and maybe he was. I picked up my glass and walked toward him, slowly, carefully, like he was something delicate that had already broken. "You cheated in this house," I said, my voice low, steady, final. "You brought your lies into the walls we built together. So now?" I smiled, just barely. "Now you can live in it, alone." He didn't say a word. Not then. Not as I turned and walked back to my seat. Not as our friends sat in stunned silence, unsure where to look or what to do. The air in the room had shifted, thicker, heavier. Even the candles on the table seemed to flicker with tension. No one dared defend him. Not after what they'd just seen. Not after the evidence I laid bare, like a surgeon exposing the rot underneath. And I felt no guilt for it. Only clarity. Mark sat down, slowly, like the weight of what he'd done had finally landed on his shoulders. His eyes searched mine, looking for some crack, some opening, some way back in. But there was nothing left to give him. The woman who used to bend to make things work, she wasn't here anymore. In her place stood someone who had been betrayed and rebuilt in silence. Someone who didn't need yelling or revenge to make her point. Just the truth, delivered without apology. As the guests began to quietly leave, some pausing to hug me, others just nodding with a quiet kind of awe, I felt lighter. Not healed. Not yet. But lighter. I cleaned the plates, kissed my kids goodnight, and folded the napkins one by one. Chloe was gone. Mark was a stranger now. But I was still standing in the house I had built, ready for the next chapter, because this wasn't the end. This was the unraveling before the rise. The divorce moved faster than I expected. Maybe it was the evidence, maybe it was his shame. Either way, Mark didn't put up much of a fight. I walked out of that courtroom with custody of the kids, the house, alimony, and, most importantly, myself. The judge didn't need convincing. The story spoke for itself. Chloe was never mentioned, not formally. But her absence in those proceedings said everything. Her name became a ghost neither side wanted to summon. Mark tried to apologize once, sent a long, rambling message full of memories and regrets. I read it twice, then deleted it. Because I didn't need his guilt. I didn't want his closure. I already had mine. From the moment I chose truth over silence, I began to find pieces of myself again. The woman who laughed without effort, who trusted her own instincts, who could stand in a storm and still feel the sun on her face. I started small. I painted the kitchen the color I always wanted. I threw out the sheets they shared. I cut my hair, just enough to feel new. Then I did something bigger. I took all that pain, all that betrayal, and turned it into something useful. I launched a small business, helping women navigate separation, divorce, and rediscovery. It wasn't just work, it was a lifeline. For them, for me. A reminder that healing isn't quiet, it's power in motion. The women who came to me weren't broken. They were paused, stuck between the life they built and the one they deserved. I recognized that look in their eyes, the one I used to see in the mirror. And it felt good. No, it felt right. To sit with them, to listen, to tell them, you're not crazy, you're just waking up. Each story they shared added something back to me. Bit by bit, their courage refueled my own. We weren't just surviving. We were rebuilding. As for Mark, word got around. His parents barely spoke to him. Friends he once bragged to began pulling away. His job? Well, that took a hit too. Turns out not every workplace welcomes a scandal. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Life has a way of balancing the scales when you stop chasing justice and simply live in your truth. Chloe disappeared completely. No goodbyes, no explanations. Just gone. Like a stain the rain eventually washes away. And in her absence, peace returned. Not all at once, but in gentle waves. The sound of my daughter's giggle while brushing her teeth. The smell of pancakes on a Saturday morning. The silence at night. Not empty, but restful. There were still hard days. I'm not going to pretend there weren't. But they were mine. And that made all the difference. Because once you reclaim your story, even the pain starts to feel like proof that you made it through. One evening, months later, I stood in the doorway of my children's room, just watching them sleep, their little chests rising and falling, their cheeks flushed from laughter and long stories before bed. The house was still. Not silent from tension, but from peace. Real peace. The kind that comes when the lies have been cleared out and only truth remains. I felt something shift inside me again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was gratitude. For the chaos, for the clarity, for the strength I never knew I had. I walked to the window and looked out over the street, the porch light glowing softly against the dark. And I thought about how close I came to losing myself, to living in a life that looked perfect but felt hollow. I thought about how easy it would have been to stay quiet, to shrink, to forgive what should never have been forgiven. But I didn't. I chose me. And by choosing me, I showed my children what strength really looks like. Not loud, not cruel, just honest. And as I turned out the lights, tucking a blanket around my son's small shoulders, I smiled. Not because everything was fixed, but because I was no longer broken. I kissed their foreheads one by one, stepped out, closed the door gently behind me.